have a couple of items to discuss today. Both are very important. So first one is there's going to be a presentation led by Mr. Barnes and also the school team to present on the superintendent's budget proposal. It's going to include both operating and capital budget. The second item is going to be presented by Jimmy, our own committee member, about the housing trends in the county. So the next week, just before we started, we're going to have some discussion more on debt, capital, and credit rating, and we're going to invite our financial advisor together with our finance department, and we're also going to cover a little bit on capital budget as well. So starting from February, the discussion will more shift towards the core items. They are typically covered by the report on the key recommendations, and then any other key charges of the committee and any other items you think of importance to the county for its long-term sustainability. All right, with that, I will stop on my side, stop sharing, and I'll hand it over to Mr. Barnes. Thank you very much for coming and making time for this committee. And please go ahead. If any of you want to share from your screen, feel free to do that.
All right. Well, Mr. Hull, so good morning, everybody. It's great to see you, Dr. Sun, and others that friends and familiar faces on this call. Yeah, it certainly is a chilly one out. We're working really hard with our county partners to continue to dig our schools out, pathways, sidewalks. So that's been the business of the week. And we're getting there. We're not there yet. So we'll see today around 3 o'clock. I'll put something out about tomorrow, like when I get the kids back in school, but we want to make sure they're in there safely as well. So we appreciate the opportunity. I'm here with Brian Hall, our Chief Financial Officer, Darren Conforti, our Executive Director of Budget, Cornell Brown, our Chief Operating Officer, and we're here to discuss, our budget, operating and capital budget request. And also we have Dan Lubley from our operations team here as well. And we'll be happy to answer your questions. So I have some brief remarks, some slides put together. I'll kick them off and before handing it over to Mr. Hall. And Brian, thanks for running the slides. So, each year, our budget development process, the process gives a school district the opportunity to kind of align its values and goals with available funding. And so the budget in and of itself does not drive change, but it does represent a powerful opportunity to advance our priorities. And this year, with a strategic plan fully in place and embraced, I want to embrace that opportunity with this operating budget season. And we're thinking about the season a little bit differently as than we have in the past. Traditionally, we've focused on the budget fiscal outlooks and working to manage challenges in ways to kind of minimize disruption. So in other words, our first order of business for many, many years, and as long as I've been here, has been really to protect the status quo. And while some of that exists and some of it's worth protecting, this year we're really reframing our budget challenges as opportunities to really rethink the way we do business so we can better advance our priorities and work to improve student outcomes, particularly for students for whom for generations we have not served well. Looking at historical data over decades, I'm extremely concerned that when I consider persisting achievement gaps, I'm excited and encouraged by those students who we do serve well, but the gaps persist across and among the same student groups as has been the case for almost our entire history. So, our team had to grapple with this idea that if we want outcomes to change, and we're really going to have to think differently. We're going to have to move away from a budget proposal that protects the status quo and hangs on to every single program, every single initiative, and we have to start just realignment. So today I just want to briefly outline that, and it begins really like by anchoring with our why. You'll see that slide on the screen. Anybody who has had to hear me talk about this has heard me say, that we have a very lofty goal. Howard County is in pursuit of greatness, the school system. And we can only claim that if we're great for each and every student. And right now, that's just not the case. And that's an uncomfortable truth. And we've known it. but we haven't really moved away from it. We've just continued to double down. Budgets of the past have just been of the nature of add, 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 add. I'm convinced, in this position and in my time in Howard County, that that's not a strategy that's led to success. And some of the stuff that exists isn't worth continued investment. So we have to let that go. Just moving on, Brian. So the team sat down this year with all those confronting those uncomfortable truths, and we, as I said, moved away from protecting the status quo. And we started with a question: what actions on the screen could we take that would most likely lead to us achieving strategic goals for and improving outcomes for students, and couched in the idea that we don't have unlimited resources, that this budget season is likely to be as difficult or more difficult than those we've experienced in the past. So how do you find that balance? And the other uncomfortable truth when you grapple with that, because we sat down and we generated $100 million worth of ideas, but the uncomfortable truth is some of those improvement initiatives for some of our students would have to wait. We'd have to focus on those initiatives that were either mandated by state law and blueprint, or for whom we could get some clear momentum in a single year to get us started. So as we looked at our dollars, we knew that we would need some new dollars. Just because the cost of everything has gone up. We knew that we would also not be able just to rely on those existing dollars, that we would have to think about repurposing and redeploying, retraining existing staff so that they could serve students who have the greatest needs. And then some things that we valued for a long time and that have been nice to haves in our district that other districts have let go long ago, we're going to have to let those go so that we can free up available dollars to focus on our strategic initiatives. So, I think that's just critically important to understand as an underpinning of this. I've worked with the board to understand that. They've talked about accountability. I've asked them to fully hold me accountable, but also to trust that our team needs some flexibility in moving things around. The change is difficult, and we'll certainly pay attention to change management, leadership strategies as we go through this season. I'm just going to provide a really quick overview of how this budget is aligned to our strategic planning, and then Brian will jump in with some specific overall numbers. So I won't get to the overall numbers until we turn it over to him. Our strategic plan is aligned to 5 strategic priorities, and we'll start on the next slide by looking at priority 1, which is strengthening learning and instruction. In total, we're considering, as we consider our strategic plan's first priority, we're proposing to invest $12.2 million and additional 12 net positions, primarily to support special education and pre-kindergarten to align with blueprint requirements. So this priority represents the heart of our staff's daily work with students in schools. And understanding that, we just can't add. We've listened carefully to our school-based staff's experiences to inform the shifts that we'll describe briefly here. We anticipate by adding these, making the shifts in this manner, that the benefit will be reduced workload for our special educators, so that we can redirect existing staff to focus on students with highest needs. We'll begin reducing the number of non-public placements by expanding our specialized programming in our school system, which will drive down transportation costs and tuition costs. We know that we're going to be realigning almost 200 existing staff so they can support multilingual learners and students with disabilities, both student groups we've not served well over generations, and for the latter and multilingual learners, staff that are students that for whom we've underinvested for the past 10 years. And we're going to have to, in order to make sure that we're not out of compliance and risk losing funding from the state through the Accountability and Implementation Board in Blueprint, we're going to have to aggressively redirect and add resources for multilingual learners. We also expect more students to enter kindergarten on grade level with their investments pre-kindergarten, and we're going to begin to implement a robust career ladder program. So moving on to priority 2, this part of the plan uplifts the safe and supportive environments where academic, social, emotional, behavioral health needs of students are met, and where they have equitable opportunities to co-create and shape their learning experience. So in total for priority 2, we're having an investment of $1.2 million and 18.5 new full-time employees who would support students' belonging and well-being. These positions are primarily related to the addition of certified athletic trainers in each one of our 13 high schools, as well as the addition of school culture and safety security assistants. And we're going to try to, where we've overcut in our health services departments last year, we're going to install some additional float nurses so that each of our schools has adequate health services coverage. So it's our expectation that what we would get from that is we could help to prevent our and certainly mitigate our students' health risk on the athletic field and in school, so we can respond quickly. Certainly students' sense of belonging and well-being. There's robust research talks about the correlation between the students who are engaged in schools and their ability to graduate college and career ready and life ready. And then we're also in this priority we're going to sunset our leadership intern program so that we can use those existing dollars in a budgetary neutral way to add more assistant principals to our leadership team to improve instructional leadership. Moving on, Brian, to priority 3. This focuses on the growth and retention of our employees, and this represents the single largest increase in the proposed budget at $53.33 million of new funding, with just one position being proposed in the area to support human resources. We're really understaffed in human resources. So there's several increases to this area, including employee compensation that's related to a prior negotiated agreement. Next year will be year 2 of a 3-year agreement with our largest bargaining unit, the Howard County Educators Association. And this budget includes a placeholder for $32.6 million for labor agreements and includes $2.5 million for staff receiving national board certification pay. That's part of the blueprint legislation. And additionally, the delta there between the 53 and a third and those, roughly $35.1 million I've described so far are increases to healthcare benefits. We're expecting about an $18 million increase in our projected healthcare benefits, and that's even after eliminating our covering of GLP-1 drugs for staff who qualify. We'll still provide those drugs for staff who qualify with diabetes, but we're very liberal in our coverage there. But we were able to realize about an $8 million savings by eliminating that coverage. So in all, this is the amount of money that's committed to our labor force. And we'll move on to priority 4. Priority 4 is focused on our sort of infrastructure, our planning, our procedures, and in total, we're asking to invest $8 million and increase by 7 positions. And most significant investment, of course, part of all this is our renewal of transportation contracts. So all of our contracts for transportation have come due this year, and our team is working effectively to extend those contracts. We're definitely looking, as I mentioned earlier, some of the positions here include those 6 proposed school culture and safety assistants for middle schools. And the other position is a budget analyst position to support labor costing implementation. The requirements of the blueprint on our accounting staff are tremendous and certainly more than one person's worth of work, but the team's going to work on an efficiency and move the work around, and we're going to start building infrastructure there. Our budget team of 6 for a $1.4 billion budget is, completely, that's an inadequate amount of staffing. So we're going to work towards building that infrastructure up. Priority 5, last one, and then I'll hand it off to Brian, is relates to our family engagement and community partnerships. And these our families are our students' first teachers, and we need to make sure that our families are connected so they're aware of all the great opportunities in our school system, regardless of the first language they speak. And so we're asking for $183,574 more dollars in additional costs, with 3 new positions to support our multilingual families and help our schools secure interpretation and translation services more easily. Primarily, this is to enhance interpretation and translation across our schools. We're spending money on contracted services that we'd like to redirect into the operating budget, so we're not overrunning our budget lines. So at this time, that's just kind of a once over. This is really a marked shift for the way we talk about our budget. in the county, instead of just trying to maintain what exists, we had to really confront the uncomfortable truth: is what is worth maintaining, and how is that what we're maintaining, how is that working out for some of our student groups? And so this budget is an effort and represents an effort to kind of redirect that conversation so that we can be more aggressive in serving those students who we've long underserved. So I'll hand it over to our Chief Financial Officer, Brian Hall, who will pick it up from here.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Barnes, and good morning, everybody. Again, I'm Brian Hall. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for the school system, and I'm going to dive a little deeper into the specific numbers included both in the current year budget. We'll start with a recap of this year's, the FY26 budget, and then look at the superintendent's proposed budget for FY27. So in the current year, the total budget for the school system is approximately $1.2 billion, which represents growth of about 6.2% year over year from FY25 to FY26, or an overall increase of $71.1 million. You can see here that we received about $24 million in additional state funding this year, which represents almost a 7% increase, and an increase in reoccurring county funding of $53.5 million, representing an increase in county funding there of about 6.5%. So you'll notice, obviously, that the state funding and the county funding both grew more than the overall budget. Why is that? Well, because we used some one-time monies in FY25 from fund balance and other places that were not used in FY26. And so when you net it all out, it comes to the overall growth of about 6.2%. Other revenues stayed about the same at almost $12 million. And then, as I mentioned, the use of fund balance and one-time funds declined by about 20% in the current year. All right, so the total cost growth for the school system was over $80 million. And that was after peeling back many, many initiatives that we had originally put forward, including athletic trainers and additional security positions at our schools. The largest by far portion of the increase, both for FY26 and you'll see it again in FY27, as Mr. Barnes highlighted, is employee compensation. And this includes both the salary increases and the benefits increases. And so together, those totaled $53.5 million, which eats up, the entirety of the additional funding that we received from the county last year. And this represented a 2.5% increase on average across all of our bargaining units, plus a step. So very much in line with, what other county employees are seeing as well. In addition to the pay and benefits, there were some other existing commitments that we had to address. Special education, while the overall enrollment of the school system is holding steady or declining slightly year over year, we continue to see significant increases both in the number of students receiving special education services and also the intensity of the needs of those students. We added an additional $6.6 million for transportation overall. We added in $5.1 million for what we called fiscal stability measures. That really was adjusting our vacancy and turnover. We actually, at the end of FY25, needed to request a supplemental appropriation. So we had outstretched the bounds of our budgets, and I'll say appropriation from our own fund balance, not additional money from the county. But we knew that we had stretched the budget as far as it could be and a little bit further. And so we made some adjustments there, and in the current year are tracking just about where we need to be to finish the year within budget, but just barely within budget. Blueprint requirements from the state continue to pile on. So we added an additional $4.7 million in the current year for that. That includes pre-K, additional pay for national board certified teachers, and some other blueprint requirements. And it's important to note that overall of these state mandates, the state is only providing, between a third and maybe at the most 40%, around a third of that funding. And then the county is required to make up the rest. The 2.3 is kind of the very last remnants of the COVID grants that we had to transition over to the operating budget. There were some services there that just had to continue. Retirement costs and then utility increases as well. So as you can see, beyond the pay and benefits for our employees, there's nothing especially exciting in here. We really boiled this down to just the absolute necessities of the school system to continue to provide the services that our students need. So as I mentioned, the overall growth for the school system needs were reduced down to a little over $80 million. Revenue only grew by just over $71 million, which left a gap of $9 million. So if people were tuned in last May, as we worked with the county, both the county council, the county executive, and our board to try and figure out, how we were going to bridge this gap with the least impact to our students, there was a lot of discussions about possible reductions, uses of one-time monies. In the end, we did a little bit of all of that. So we did have some additional one-time monies that we pumped in from our fund balance and from our health fund at the end of last year. We also made $9 million in reductions, equating to over 100 full-time employee equivalents. So significant reductions to schools and some long-standing, long-valued programs in Howard County had to be considered as these state mandates continue to come to us and obviously cannot be ignored. And so as we have approached the state and discuss some of the financial challenges, us and every other district in the state, the challenges that the blueprint is putting forward. I think they understand that, but the reality is that if we need to reallocate money from existing programs, they expect us to do that in order to meet the state requirements. So we did use, as I mentioned, some one-time monies to balance the FY26 budget, less than the previous year, but there was some money from the health fund, some money from the technology fund, our general fund balance, and then transferring money from one of our special revenue accounts to balance the budget. So transitioning to the FY27 proposed budget, the proposed budget totals $1.28 billion, an increase of $61.9 million or 5.1% above the current FY26 budget. So as you can see, it's a smaller requested increase than in previous years, but yet more than we received last year or in any previous year. So we understand that this will be a stretch for the county to fund this, but again, we have boiled this down to really the bare necessities of what the superintendent, myself, and the rest of the team feels are necessary to provide the quality education for our students. So here you see the 15 state categories. You can see the FY26 approved budget, the superintendent's proposed, the year-over-year change in each category, and then the percentage change. The top category there, administration, increased by about $1.9 million. A lot of that was just reassigning some costs that we had in other categories, and we can get more into that later if there's interest. But I did want to also just point out that our administration in category 1 there, as a percentage of the overall budget, is lower than any other district in the entire state of Maryland. And then at the bottom, it shows the expense type. So, where is this additional money going? Salaries and benefits, or salaries and wages, of course, contracted services. A lot of that is transportation, and then additional supplies, materials, equipments, and other expenditures. So again, this is just kind of recapping. As Mr. Barnes shared, we're presenting the budget in a different way this year. Obviously, we still need to align it with the state categories as required by MSDE, the Maryland State Department of Education. The blueprint is also requiring us to report it in yet another way based on their minimum school fund initiative within there. So we're reporting to the state actually in 2 different ways now, which has created significant additional work for our budget department. But we're also trying to share it based on the priorities of the strategic plan, which we think is an easier way for the public to understand not just what we're doing, but why we're doing it and why these investments are so critical to moving the school system forward.
Hey, Brian.
Yes.
Todd here. Can you go back one real quick? So in your priority 3, that's what staff costs are, correct?
Correct. That would be the increase in salaries,
Right.
benefits, and then there's some other costs in there as well.
But if you go back one more slide, because I see that going up by 53 million, but go back one more slide if you would. So state category 3 is only showing a year-over-year change of 3.6, but the next slide is showing 53 million, and that's where staff salaries and wages are in both of those categories. So how do you reconcile 0.82 increase year over year to the $53 million increase in your priority 3?
Yes, that's a great question. So thank you for that. So category 3 is where like classroom teachers, related arts teachers would fall, but there is staff pretty much in every one of these categories. And so, special education has significance. I mean, literally in all of these categories, there's staff. And so it really is spread out throughout this. And then if you look at category 12, the fixed charges, that's where all of the insurance sits. And that's also included in the 54 million. So it really, it's not as simple as just looking at category 3. The reason category 3 shows actually a relatively low increase is because of the lower enrollment that we had this year. And so we, needed fewer general education teachers, classroom teachers. So we were able to reduce those numbers slightly in that category. But as I shared earlier, special education and some of these other needs continue to increase significantly. And so that's where you'll see some of the larger increases.
So the full-time equivalent reduction that you referenced previously is reflected in, I mean, it's everywhere, but it's primarily in this case in category 3.
I would want to look a little bit deeper into the numbers to make that declaration, but yes, certainly there was reductions in general ed teachers in category 3 to account for the lower enrollment.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And if I could jump in here real quickly, Brian, going back to that previous slide, just to clarify, when you talk about benefits, would that fall under something like fixed charges?
Exactly.
Which then, if you go to the expense types, would probably be under other charges.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. All right. So, as Mr. Barnes shared, we fully recognize the needs of the school system are outpacing the funding of the county. And so, in this budget, we really looked at, what are some existing services that we're currently providing that, while valued and very important, those resources may be better used in other areas, especially addressing the needs of some of our student groups who have historically been under-supported. And so one of the moves that we're making is reallocating 20 paraeducator positions that were focused on multilingual learners at the secondary level and changing those into 11 multilingual teachers. And that's because our superintendent and our chief academic officer feel that, those are the positions that are really going to move the needle for these students. We're also converting the existing multilingual and grade level paras, which is something we're fortunate to have here in Howard County. Going to do some additional training for them and have them really making sure that they're providing the supports that we need for our multilingual learners and our special education students. In addition to that, there are a few other groups of positions that we're proposing will be eliminated and the resources reallocated into into other valuable positions, and those are highlighted at the bottom there. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Cornell Brown, our Chief Operating Officer, to talk through the capital budget.
Good morning, everyone. Cornell Brown, Chief Operating Officer. Brian, you can go to the next slide, please. All right, so our capital program responds to a number of requirements. it's a never-ending process when we're looking at our capital program. But we do start off with looking at our capacity needs, and that's identified and captured in our educational facilities master plan that we reimagined last year, our first edition. In our 2025 educational facilities master plan, we capture our enrollment trends throughout the county. As we all know, our blueprint, lays out various requirements, mostly full-day pre-K. We've been working with our instructional folks to look at how we are expanding pre-K throughout the district. Within our facilities master plan and our capital budget requests, you'll see, over the years, requests to, make facility adjustments to respond to those requirements. We're working with our academic team to look at our middle and high schools, just so that we can make sure we can align our facilities requirements to the needs of our high school students as we look at, preparing them so that they're career and college ready. We know that our special education program continues to grow and expand. Our instructional folks are working with us, and we're working with them to align those two requirements. And we've talked significantly about our maintenance program, mostly in our deferred maintenance. We're over $190 million identified in deferred maintenance requirements. Just like in our capital program and our educational facilities master plan, we're looking at our comprehensive maintenance plan to reimagine, how we lay out our maintenance requirements. And our deferred maintenance within that document will show that, year over year, if not addressed, we estimate that our deferred maintenance requirements will grow at around 30 million annually. So in our, capital budget requests, we kind of sprinkle comprehensive maintenance requirements throughout, and then we'll be able to, be more transparent as we continue to expand our programs there.
Dr. Brown.
Addition. Mr. Brown. I know everybody's trying. My cousin, Doctor. I have a cousin who's Dr. Brown, but I go by Mr.
All right. Well, we'll go with Mr.
Thank you.
Can I get a definition from you? I know what the definition of deferred maintenance is in the private sector. I don't know what your definition is of deferred maintenance, and this term gets thrown around a lot, and I'm frankly confused as to exactly what it is.
Okay, so our deferred maintenance is in line with standard practice throughout the industry, where we have our building systems and components when they exceed their useful life, and we do not address those maintenance requirements. That's identified as deferred maintenance. So I just like to look at a rooftop unit that has an expected life of 25 years. When it hits that 25th year, we capture the replacement cost based on current replacement estimates. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess sufficiently, but not not completely. So we'll leave it be.
Okay, and again, you can follow up with additional clarification, just so that we make sure that we're aligned and on the same page there. So we look at the age of the equipment, and when it exceeds the age, we.
For me, it's just there's a bit of a discrepancy between that very specific term within the public sector versus the private sector. So leave it.
We can talk offline and maybe
we
can talk offline, and then we can kind of align our terms and definitions there. But the state, they in 2019, 2020, they contracted with facilities planners to go throughout every school district in the state of Maryland, and they completed a facilities assessment. That facilities assessments identified the various deficiencies in our school system assets, and they've identified, through facilities conditions index, the replacement requirement. And we use that data to, align with our maintenance projects and determine what our priorities are. Next slide, Brian. So our capital budget process, we've been talking about how we can kind of fine tune that process. So last year, April, the board approved a process that we're using to prioritize our capital needs. We're completing a sufficiency study to look at our buildings, to do an inventory of how our buildings support our programs, not only in our instructional spaces, but our administrative spaces as well. Central office is an example that I use, where we're looking at the building, looking at our needs, and identifying what those requirements are, and then also identifying what the deficiency is and the solutions to best support those programs. So what we expect to have is a educational or program sufficiency index that we can align with our facilities conditions index to have data that we can use to fully outline our capital program requirements and our cost of ownership, really, to maintain all of our facilities and meet the needs of the school district. This information will be captured in our educational facilities master plan, and we will be able to identify our short-term comprehensive maintenance plan requirements and our long-term plans, over the coming years. So our focus is always first to look at our program requirements and align our requirements to leverage our state funding. So we've changed our process so that over the summer, we fine-tune our capital needs, align them with our state projects, obtain the board's approval so that we can meet the state submission deadline. That's usually in the first week of October. Then after we go through that process, we continue to identify local requirements, and then we work with our stakeholders to identify those local project requirements in October and November so that we can obtain the board's approval for that, and then align that with our operating budget process to submit that to the county executive once the operating budget is fine-tuned. Brian, next slide, please. So within that, the never-ending cycle of our capital budget. Right now, we're looking at our enrollment just to make sure that we understand what our current and projected needs for our students are. We align that data with our educational facilities master plan that we submit to our board for approval in June so that we can submit it to the state by July 1. And then we start our conversations with our stakeholders around our capital budget in July and through the summer. We present to the board, we work with our stakeholders so that we can obtain the board's approval in September. We submit that capital budget to the state, and we know we're always in conversations with them. They have various work sessions and all just to make sure they understand our requirements. We understand what funding will be made available for us. And throughout the process, we're, fine tuning, as I had mentioned on a previous slide, our local requirements, and we continue those conversations with our board so that we can align, the projects that are being proposed with the board's priorities and obtain their approval in November. We're working with our, local, partners, the budget office at the, county executive level and with the county council to obtain the required approvals there. And again, here we are now fine tuning, aligning with our operating budget so that we can officially submit the budget to the county executive for consideration. And then we just work with our local fiscal authorities throughout May so that we can get a final board approval of the capital budget and make adjustments based on what the state's final appropriations are and what the county could actually invest in terms of capital improvement. Final slide, sir. Well, not the final, next to the final slide. So We all know that costs continue to, rise. So since 2018, throughout the state, you've seen a 63% on average, throughout the various school districts increase in, the cost of capital funding. The market continues to, drive what we do, and we're challenged with meeting that need. Our square foot cost is below the state average, but it is still increasing. And in today's environment, we're adjusting, and our estimates on our future projects are being updated to reflect the current market. But you see there where in 2018, cost per square foot for site and school construction on average throughout the state was $315 a square foot. Now, and what they're projecting is well, not projecting this year. We're seeing $513 a square foot. So that's significant. And also, in tandem with that, the state has over the years changed its share percentage for what they would contribute for what we call bricks and sticks. So back in 2012, the state was picking up 61% of our cost. And you can see there that they steadily started to back off on their contribution to a current 50-50 split for school-related construction costs. I just like to note they do participate now on some of our soft costs for design services. That did change, a few years ago, but still, you see that now local, agencies are expected to pick up more of the construction costs when compared to the share percentages of, a decade or so ago. Next slide, sir. So with all that, what we have presented, to our board, and we received approval of projects that total 89.5 million of local funding. We are asking the state to contribute for state eligible projects a little over $27 million. For those state funded projects, the local share is estimated to be a little over 21 million. And then the balance of the 89.5 million is some 68.2 million of local projects that are not where we're not seeking state funding. Our capital budget for state eligible projects kind of are based on the needs for growing elementary school enrollment. For the new elementary school 43 that targets growth in the southeastern area. We have facility requirements at Patapsco Middle School, and we're looking to continue with our Oakland Mills Middle School project. And then Dunlogan Middle is the next, major construction project that we'll be, coming out of the gate with. So that concludes, my presentation, Brian. I'm open to any questions or follow-up discussion.
I have kind of a broader question with respect to the number of seats we have now versus the number of students we have now. It's my understanding that at every level of instruction, elementary, middle, and high, that we now have more seats than students as a system. So if we look back to the justification for making the addition of seats that were made in projections 4 or 5 years ago, that was based on a pretty significant projection in enrollment estimates looking forward. So are we now delivering more seats into a system that's already are we delivering more seats into a system that already has sufficient number of seats based on the number of seats we have versus the number of students we have. I do recognize, of course, that there are locality needs as opposed to system-wide needs, but aren't we delivering seats now that we don't need based on our current enrollment projections?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a balance. So you're accurate when you say we have you say locality needs, but there are certain areas throughout the county where we do have a seat capacity issue. The elementary school 43 represents one of them, where we just have a region that we need to address. But throughout the county, our enrollment is flat and has been flat. So we are targeting through redistricting, and here with the proposed elementary school, and then like at the middle school, we have an addition here, an addition there to just deal with enrollment in a specific area, not throughout the county, where redistricting is not the solution. Right. So communities are, huge when you start talking about public schools. So where it makes sense to shift students around, that's what we propose to do. But when that doesn't make sense, then an addition or a new school would be proposed. Guilford Park High School, was one that was proposed to address the high school capacity needs. But what's often overlooked are the programmatic requirements. And that's one of the reasons, well, the main reason why we are moving forward with our efficiency, our space efficiency evaluation. So we can take a look at those non-student seat requirements. Our community schools, there are space requirements for those. They're not directly tied to student enrollment. When you start to look at pre-K expansion, that's a requirement that we are charged to address. So we have our pre-K enrollment is not even factored in to our seating capacity needs. So that's another pressure. And then you just have various programmatic, whether it be wraparound services, administrative requirements, and those needs that don't directly correlate with how many student seats you have and how many students you are serving. So through our space evaluation, we're going to identify the requirements for these programs, the type of space that we need, what do we have, and then identify the gap. And that's what we need to do. And the state, we're in front of them, on this initiative, where we realize that we need to evaluate our programmatic requirements now. The state realized that too, but they're planning to do a statewide programmatic evaluation, but that's not for a couple of years out. So we will have our programmatic requirements before the state does, and then we will be able to look at our facility deficiencies, and we'll be able to look at our programmatic deficiencies that are in addition to enrollment, and then define really what an elementary school should look like, a middle school, a high school, our special ed facilities, our alternative ed facilities, our ARL. We would definitely look at what our career and technology education programs, need, and what the types of spaces we have, the types of spaces we need, and then to lay out the long-term strategy for what we need to do to upgrade our facilities to meet the needs of the program. So it's not only the comprehensive maintenance, the age of the facility, the age of the roof. That's the easy thing to kind of lay out. A building is supposed to last about 50 years, a roof 25 years. So Guilford Park is 3 years old. 47 years from now, we should be planning for a major project. But then 22 years from now, we should be planning to replace the roof and look at upgrading the HVAC equipment. So that's a plan that we know that at Guilford Park High School, the time frame based on industry standard for useful life, where we'll plan to go ahead and upgrade the facility infrastructure. But what we don't know is what will change in the educational environment and what upgrades programmatic we'll have to plan for at Guilford Park. So we will constantly be looking at the programmatic needs, in addition to the number of seats, in order to make sure we have the appropriate spaces to support the instructional program. So that's a long-winded question because it's very, complex. But that kind of explains, like, it's not all about we got 10 students, we got 10 desks. It's also about, is it a pre-K program? Are they 3-year-olds? Are they 4-year-olds? What is our need for science? What is our need for wraparound services? Care closet and food pantries in our community schools, they're taking up space, but, they're being shoved in conference rooms. So we need to really define what the programs of our schools are. What do we have? What do we need to invest to upgrade them?
Thanks.
Thank you, the team. Any other questions for the school team? I actually have one for, I think, Brian. Brian, in your one of your slide was talking about in current year 26, there's state aid of growth of 24.4 million FY26 on that. But 27, the draft proposal, I know have a very modest placeholder, about only 10 million increase because the student enrollment has been dropping. Now, last week, the governor just released his proposal, which obviously have to go through the General Assembly on that. But his proposal does indicate enhanced investment on that. So I just want to ask, like, if that get approved by General Assembly, what does that mean? Like, how much would be the growth for state aid, for general fund?
Yeah, thank you for that. And Darren Conforti is on too, and I'll ask him to, fill in any areas that I leave out. But we did receive the preliminary state aid estimates last Friday. And so everything that was included in the superintendent's budget is based on our internal calculations. And then we get the preliminary state aid numbers. We got them on Friday. We won't have our final state aid numbers until like May or June, much later in the spring. The numbers that MSDE put out last week did include the proposed changes in the governor's budget. And so to your point, Holly, even though they're included in the numbers MSDE sent out, they are not finalized until the legislature, adopts, approves, or changes the governor's budget. But they did show an increase, and the team is kind of working through trying to dissect exactly, what that impact for the school system will be. But we do expect that state aid number to increase from the 10.1 million that was included in the superintendent's budget.
Okay, thank you. Now, the governor's proposal also to have a couple other things related to school or other costs there. Like one thing, as everybody knows, last year the state, because of its own fiscal challenges there, they shifted quite some cost to all counties in Maryland, and some part is there are like about $9 million shifted to the Howard County government, which include about 6.7 million, I think, is pick up the teachers or school employee pension. The part that used to be, the liability used to be handled by the state, they shift some cost to local on that, and that's including the county budget there, but it's for the school employees here. Now the governor's proposal, again, to be determined by the General Assembly, to your point there, because nothing is final, was proposing some additional increase to that there. I think from what I saw, I think it's another 3 million-ish for school, community college, and library employee pension. So there will be some additional cost possibly shifted to the county on that. I don't think that impact your budget directly, but it will impact county's use of new resources to cope with state mandate if that gets final approval. And also we learned from MSDE just a couple of days ago is about the pre-K private pre-K local match. As you know, for years it was blueprint there. It was in the school's budget appropriation, and then now it's going to be shifted to the county part again for school system, but it's going to show in the county budget based on their preliminary estimates, also close to 3 million. So if everything get approved and again materialized, that means that county is going to just pick up another probably close to 6 million increase there for school system, but not reflecting in the school appropriation. Just FYI, because we just learned about it. Again, everything is still very preliminary. I don't know what's going to happen there, but that's if they get approved in that dollar amount and to some level that was going to eat into any new funding available for the whole county there. That just we just heard about that. I don't know what's going to get finalized there. So just,
Yeah, and they shifted some additional costs to the school system as well for special education, non-public placements. They used to pick up 70% of those costs. This current year, they shifted it to 60. Next year, they're shifting their portion down to 50. So, as a state, to your point, Holly, as they grapple with their budget challenges, obviously one of the solutions they've landed on is to just pass additional costs down to the local school systems and the local county governments. So yes, definitely a challenge for all of us.
thank you very much for the team.
I have Holly. I have one more thing. I just want to make sure I'm clear on this. So there's $190 million in deferred maintenance. Is that capital maintenance that's past its useful life? And then there's a capital maintenance budget in addition to the deferred maintenance budget, and the 190 is a catch-up budget for items that are past their useful life? Because we're planning for both, right? I mean, if you have a roof that's 21 years old and it's supposed to last 25, you should be planning for it, or is that all just being laid off into future deferred maintenance?
No, we're going to plan for catching up on our deferred maintenance and then being proactive and planning for the replacement of our assets prior to it reaching its useful life.
So
honestly,
the 190 is capital maintenance
it's a backlog.
that's exceeded its useful life.
Yes, it's a backlog of
Okay.
capital needs that we did not address.
Oh, understood. Thank you so much.
Okay. If no other questions, thank you so much, Mr. Barnes and your team for participating in today's committee and giving great presentation. And also thank you, all the committee members, for good questions there. Thank you.
Yeah, I agreed. Thank you, Dr. Sun. Appreciate the continued partnership. We're in this together, and thank you to the SAAC for your service to our community, because this is all, we're all on the same team here. So thank you very much, and have a great rest of your meeting.
Thank you. All right, I think let's move to the next agenda item. Jimmy, do you want to run slides from your screen or our technology people? Okay.
Yep, you got it.
Go ahead.
Okay, so decided to do something a little different this year. NAR, Maryland Realtors, and also our association. I guess we're gonna try to give a different type of a storytelling type of presentation, and we were kind of guided not to use anything from run up to the pandemic, because all that was great news. And so we got to really kind of focus on, what the last trends are in the last 5 years. It's kind of where the run up is right now. And it's not a good news, bad news. It's a concerning news versus a potential news, if you want to kind of put it that way. So let's go to the first slide. And so let's do the national stuff first, just one slide of national news. By the way, this report is going to be given from Dr. Lawrence Yoon and Dr. Sturdivant on tomorrow, the 29th. They do an annual report for the realtor body. So I had a chance to have a sneak peek of it at the end of the first part of January, and just to get some of the highlights. And one of the things that they're going to be sticking with is mostly 2025 was mostly a stagnant year as far as home sales. And a lot of it had to do with the mortgage rates back in the early spring, summertime. First-time home buyers, and you're going to see this this cry through 2026 has now bumped up to the age of 40 when you start to see the average first-time home buyer right now. That's never happened. It's been trending in the mid first of the early 30s and the mid 30s. We started to, back in 23, we're starting to creep up to like 37 years old, 37 and a half. As of last year, 2025, it's going to end up at 40 years old as your first time home buyer. And that's an important thing to notice when we talk about availability and supply. So mortgage rates, even though it fell from 7% in early 2025, it is improving the buyer interest. However, one thing we are going to share is that the people who have actually owned homes since 2020, there's going to be a couple of graphs. They've done very well. So interest rates really does not affect them as far as moving. So has interest rates really played a big part? Well, again, people have done very well, especially in our county. If you've owned a home since 2020, you've done extremely well. That investment was you took advantage of not only the mortgage rates, but you took advantage of the equity and the increase in as far as the value of your home. The mortgage applications for purchases has been pretty strong, especially the last part of this year, believe it or not. And even with the uncertainty back in September and October, it seems like there are more buyers who've been renting for a long time, and rents were getting a little high. They're really finding out it's cheaper to try to to make that leap to get together, as we've seen a lot of people with multifamilies getting together, purchasing homes. So they're doing dual applications or multiple applications with 3 and 4 names on it, which is we have not seen that in I don't know how long. Seeing more people being on one mortgage application. Projected home sales this year nationally, they're thinking about 14% up, which is a measurable rebound, and that not really about the supply, is really about the cost. So people are actually moving out of areas that are more expensive. And by the way, we're having, I think the governor have announced several times about the migration out of the state of Maryland because of the cost of it. And by the way, that's a real thing. We've been talking about that on our Maryland level. People moving closer to the West Virginia, York, Pennsylvania is one of the fastest growing areas, at least in our region right now. And matter of fact, I think the last presentation someone gave last week, we're talking about the work from home. Yeah, that working from home is a real thing, and people are finding best. They don't want to go back to work, go back into offices, and if they can find better jobs where they can work from home, they're moving to least expensive areas. So that migration is still definitely real. And the home prices are expected to continue to rise at about 4% in 2026. So homeowners will continue to do very well. They will continue to do very well. So what about Maryland, the state of Maryland? Let's go down a little bit. So Maryland home sales fell 3.1% statewide. And by the way, that is very concerning because there is a migration, and the migration patterns we're seeing is still going to the York, Pennsylvania area, towards the West Virginia, Charlestown area, where their areas are just a little bit cheaper. Even though the prices rose, the average sales price rose about 3.7%. The median home price was up 2.6%. Again, if you're a homeowner, you're doing extremely well equity-wise. So what's really the motivation of moving if your investment has continued to increase? The Maryland market is showing early signs of shifting towards buyers. Our days on market are starting to creep up a little bit, and our housing inventory is a slight increase. And that does not mean it's a balanced market, though. Inventory means the houses are sitting out there a little bit longer. People making a little bit more decisions on whether they want to purchase or not. We're seeing a lot of people asking for closing help, which has been an anomaly the last 18 months. Sellers were usually not even giving closing help. They weren't given any type of closing assistance. And now buyers are starting to ask for it. So The Maryland's economy, even though it's softened with job losses, the uncertainty is probably what's the biggest grind that we're having right now. It's just people just being cautiously optimistic, even though the borrowing costs are getting lower, but the migration that we're seeing are people who actually have great equity that are just moving out, or they're retiring and deciding just to kind of stay put. So they're not even selling what they have, because they were able to either pay down what they have, especially in our county. It looks like our county is getting a little older. And if you go to the next slide, there's one thing that we.
Quick question. I'm sorry, Jimmy. Yeah, Jimmy, compare the state and national, just big, broad status and outlook. It seems like states are lagging behind the national in general, both so far and outlook. Do you think that's mostly because of the overall, like this region's exposure to what's happening on the federal side, that, or it's just like maybe more pricey than other places in terms of?
So what had happened? So we had back in September we had a conference in DC, and the one we've realized about how federal employees and federal contractors were a big portion of our DMV footprint. Lisa Sturdivant from Bright MLS was she did a breakdown of how that, what was this regression of home sales here, and based off pricing. So the one thing we found out, and I didn't know this, the highest counties of federal employees and nationally, federal employees and federal contractors were in 2 counties in the DMV area. Out of the top 10, there was Prince George's and Charles, believe it or not. And I had no idea about Charles County. I really didn't. So I kind of missed that altogether. And even though those price points of those homes were at the lowest at one time, they actually have the most increase as far as new construction. Now, because of the uncertainty, some of those new construction projects are actually sitting. They're not really, there's a lot of builder incentives right now, because people, the job loss was real. It was real in this area. And so that's where some of the migration happened. We started, and as strange as it seems, we've had our first, in the last 6 months, we're starting to see short sales again and a few foreclosures starting to come. Now, we haven't seen that in, I don't know, 10 years. And now we're starting to see a few of those in some of those counties. So again, a lot of it's just uncertainty. But the job loss was real. The support systems were real, as far as like government contractors. That's real. And so, like I said, I did not know about Charles County as much. We've always focused on Prince George's County, part of Montgomery County, and Arlington, which had the most contractors and federal employees. But I guess Charles County just kind of led the way there. And
Hey,
that's
Jimmy.
something not on our original radar. Yeah.
Yeah, Steve Hunt here. Having grown up in South Prince George's County and just knowing a little bit more about the history of Charles, I'm not surprised at that, because basically, as Prince George's County got more and more built out, the migration went south. So think of Charles. Charles is to Prince George's as, say, what we see people being Howard for, Carroll or Frederick. It's one of those deals where it started moving south because of affordability, and Charles had a lot of land and still do. So that's where the building started happening.
Yeah, which is even more interesting. There's very little commuter infrastructure.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is making it even more costly to be there now. So, but
Yeah.
that was interesting. The thing about Maryland that we've learned in that September conference. So
Yeah, absolutely on point about
we
the
don't see any
structure.
improvement on that. We do not see a lot of improvement, especially around some of the bases. So there's no forecast of any improvement as far as any type of job opportunities there. But we do see the migration to, like I said, the York, Pennsylvania is one of the fastest growing areas we see right now. Migration from Maryland to York. And so that's very interesting. Matter of fact, we actually placed another real estate office there because of that. There was a business opportunity there. But the thing is, that's kind of what's happening right now.
Yeah, a lot of the Charles folks work in DC, so yeah, hit Route 5 or Route 210 during morning or afternoon rush hour, and yeah, it's a nightmare because you're right, the infrastructure has not caught up at all.
Okay.
So anyway,
So let's just go to the county portion. No, let's go to the county portion of it. So let's look at a quick snapshot. So home values, like over the past 10 years, the values are climbing. People are doing really well. I mean, if you were a Howard County resident in the last 10 years, especially the last 5 years, you're doing extremely well. Even with the strong school districts, there is a limited housing supply, so there's not a lot out there. But affordability for first-time home buyers, they're struggling with that. Like I said, the national average at 40. I don't know what it is, the average in our county, but I'm sure it's probably a little bit higher than 40 because there's really no supply right now. And what we have is extremely expensive, especially in the state of Maryland. Inventory challenges, Howard County has just not kept pace. And I guess I've been doing this presentation for the last 3 years, and we've saying the same thing over and over again. As the market conditions tighten, there is no new builder projects that we can see that's out there, especially without any type of rezoning or anything else. There's just nothing out there. The one thing I did not put in this report this year, and it was an easy call not to do. Every year I will put the over 55 communities in there, but there was no projects built. There is nothing there, and there's nothing to what we can see has been planned for our aging communities outside of things out of DC, DHCD, anything like that. But there's nothing to report for that, which is very interesting. So, okay, next one. So active listings, and I just took a 5-year period because we've been pretty much encouraged to start removing everything from 2020 backwards now, and so we can get a better trend of what the forecast, what it looks like going forward. Across the 5-year period, these are the pricing changes, and with seasonality as far as active listings. Again, there's a bigger gap in 2025 as far as pricing with our active listings than there's ever been. That is that's the maroon line. I wish I had the pointer working because it was actually giving you the dollar amount there. But there's a big gap for 2024 to actually 2025 this year. And so there's just a lot more inventory out there where we used to be 16 and 20 days worth or a month, or less than a month. It's creeping up there, but it's really about affordability now. Can someone who work in this area afford to buy a starter home, whether it's a single family or something that's attached, that's available because of, like I said, the equities in the last 10 years, 5 to 10 years. That gap is starting to widen, which means your down payment has to be larger. The cost of it, as far as the entry level, as far as like the interest rates, higher than as in the last several years. So, and it seems like there's no inventory pressures to try to expand as far as like building projects right now. But people do want to be in Howard County, and that's the thing. Howard County is the place, the place to be. So year to year, right now, inventory trends are going high as far as active listings. So there's believe it or not, more houses on the market. Problem is finding the purchasers right now who can actually afford those houses with the price increases every year. Next one. Again, month of supply. We went from last year right over about a month. Now we're almost close to 2 months of supply. So it's getting higher and higher. But what's out there is still more expensive. Again, sellers are doing very well. They're doing extremely well, and they're able to roll over their equity to their next home if it's available. So their costs are not as high as entry, but our buyers are still they're struggling with that first payment and that entry level. And most, like I said, they're starting to ask for closing costs, but it does not mean the sellers are giving closing costs. And that seems to be a barrier too. So they're willing to wait. Sellers are willing to wait a little longer to get the perfect buyer for them. They're not willing to give up any of their additional equity right now. Next one.
Hey, Jimmy, real quick.
Sure.
Todd here. Is there data on the amount that's financed, and is that changing?
Believe it or not, the data that we're seeing now, and I don't think I took a lot of the data heavy stats I did last year. I took a lot of that out, but there's a big shift, a huge shift towards cash and also conventional financing. That's the majority of the purchases right now. Very little FHA, continues to be very small. VA is almost non-existent. And there's rarely any seller financing or things like that. So we're just not, you have to have 20% or more. But the cash purchases continue to pick up.
So the buyers that are out there are extremely well capitalized.
Yes, and
which means that the entry level buyers are still lagging.
That's where the affordability is. The sellers, if you own a home in the last 10 years, and you will hear economists talk about this forever, you've done extremely well on your investment. So interest rate doesn't affect you at all. So whether it's a 6% interest rate for your next purchase, doesn't matter if you've gained 40% investment, 40% equity in the last 10 years. So it doesn't really matter.
So who's buying in Howard County? Are we just essentially having a bunch of wealthy people trade houses among themselves?
So here's an interesting thing we're finding. So the only several smaller projects that have been built were homes that were like 800 and above. And the people who are moving to those or shifting to those are usually the retirees, believe it or not, or the ones who really want to stay in the county, don't want to move outside of the county. But their equities in their existing homes are very large. So their down payments are extremely large. So it's not unusual to have like 2 weeks ago, a house that represented, 1.4 million. He put down 1.1 million. He financed the rest.
Yeah.
And
so
a lot of it comes from the equity that he was selling from from the home that he was leaving out of. So,
right. So, I mean, we just came from a presentation where we heard that school enrollment's flat.
yes.
And that would be indicative of a community where you just have wealthy people who are later in life trading up, and then very wealthy people who are stopped working trading out. And we have a pyramid scheme real estate market where it's just dependent upon wealthy people trading with other wealthy people to get into homes. And at the same time, demographically, we're showing that young families aren't coming here as our school enrollment declines.
So Josh, I mean, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think I talked about that last year about what we're kind of seeing, where you're seeing a lot of families, like I said, on the loan application, there's multiple families now. And so they could be saving up down payments to move out, later on, but they're moving in with their parents, just like I think I told everybody, my 31-year-old son moved back home for affordability reasons. And I get it. I get it. But the ones who have been in their homes for a while, like I said, 10 years or even 5 or 6 years, they've done very well. So whatever's available for them to move up to, they're using the equity to actually do a leverage pivot. It's not costing them anything. And so what's hurting is the homes that they're moving out of is now affordable to that other demographic to move up into that one, but still the entry level of the median, sales price of a home or a starter home just really does not exist. And there's really no, to where we see, there's no projects that we can see.
Do
that
we
are
have
coming up.
starter homes in Howard County?
If there are some, I will look outside of, like a private builder, doing maybe 30 to 40 units or smaller, but there's nothing there. There's no projects there. And it could be because of buildable land too. There's not a lot of buildable land either. But the rezoning and we can't wait on things like some of the projects that hopefully will happen, but it is what it is right now. So it's Howard County is set the way it is.
But one question, kind of along Josh's lines, I'm trying to think about what is available. What about the older townhomes and smaller single family homes in Columbia? Are they not on the market? Are they're not changing hands either? Or is the affordability problem everybody wants a brand new house and you can't afford a brand new house and they don't want to buy a townhouse or a small home in Columbia? I mean, that I'm just thinking back 40 plus years. We started with a townhouse, and
So
Uh,
so Todd, even the townhouses, if your average townhouse now is running in the fours, that's not where it used to be, low threes, 310, 315, back in 2021, 2020. How do you get it? How do you come up with that additional 20%, even in that gap? How do you do that?
yeah, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
There are no even older townhomes that are available in Columbia in the twos, for instance.
But here's another interesting part. So, and I didn't add it to this report because, again, some things are not even, it's not even worth talking about now because we saw this trend for the last 3 years of reporting. Condominiums are very affordable, except for the condominium condo dues are so expensive. So to see a condo dues at $300 to $400 to $500 a month is not unusual for a condo at $290 or $300 for a 1 or 2 bedroom. So even that's expensive. And so a 3 bedroom, and I just checked it out down at the Meriwether district. If you go down there, it's now $3,900 a month.
For HOA fees, condo dues?
No. If you go to the Meriwether district, the apartments down there, if you just say you're
Oh,
renting,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
$3,900 a month now, because there's incentives for, of course, realtors to find people to even for rentals. That's a big part of our revenue too. And so even those 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms are $3,900 a month. In condos, if you even a 2 bedroom condo with a 2 bedroom, 2 bath with the condo dues and then the HOA dues connected can be close to almost $3,000 a month. So the affordability is real. It just, you have to make it make sense. I mean, especially if you have a family or a growing family, you can buy into it because the condos seem to stay on the market longer. But if you buy into a condo, it's really difficult to sell because those fees just does not go down. If anything, it goes up. The insurance portion goes up. It never goes down. So if that makes sense. So there's one key part right here. The 2021 was the lowest price year so far we had in our 5-year view, where the median price was about the mid fours to the low fives. But right now, if you go to 2025, that mark, it's like the median is like in the sixes, and that's kind of where we're sitting at right now. Like I said, if you owned a home, you did extremely well. And so, let's go one more slide. Closed sales. Even though the prices continue to rise, from 620, which is a 2.5% increase, average is a 677,000. Sales pretty much are flat. They're pretty stable year over year. we've reached about 2.3 billion in sales last year in Howard County, which is not which is a great year still, but it's with not as many units because the prices actually are higher with not as many sales. So is that an inflated number? Could be. But the market pace average days on market still increases, even though we have a strong demand for well-priced homes. There just isn't anything out there. Pretty much, everything is selling at 99.8% of the original list price. So whatever the seller says, this is the houses, I'm pricing my house at that. There's no deals out there. That's kind of what you're going to buy it at. There's really no incentive to go outside of that. And builders, like I said, builders have gotten smarter. Builders are offering a lot of incentives to move out of area, especially like in the York area. Prince George's County has a lot of new projects, but even these projects down here are slowing down. Just trying to find active buyers. Okay, next one. So I'm saying all this to say this. So as far as the dollar amount, the volume, almost 2.3 billion last year. Average sales price went up almost, a 1.5%. The median sales price at 620,000, which is the highest close to the highest in the state right now. So units sold is, still relatively flat. Inventory is increasing. However, the average list to sales price is right about 100%. So whatever it is that you're asking, that's what you're going to have to pay for. Attached homes, your townhomes went up 3% as far as pricing. The average townhome right now is at 484,000, and we know probably close to end of 2026 it will be close to to 500,000 and remember, this is not new townhomes. These are existing townhomes right now. So Todd, that may answer some of your questions as far as like older. So I think you would never think of an older townhome being $500,000, but that's kind of where the average is going to be. Detached homes, and a lot of these are the newer ones, especially in the Fulton area. $841,000 for a single family home right now. That's the average right now. Units sold, everything is kind of flat as far as from year to year. And so again, we just worried a little bit, and at least in our association, about the migration north and I guess north and east, north and west, just based off of affordability. And some of the retirees, I mean, once they leave, they're just leaving out of area and say, hey, look, I'll take advantage of what I have, buy into a cheaper place to live, use my retirement benefits, and we're good to go. Next one, I think that should be wrapping it up. So here's our opinions. Inventory will likely remain, the same. Higher home values are inevitable. That's not gonna stop, even with the supply of homes going to be a little bit higher. Those prices will not come down. They're going to just continue to increase 2 to 3%. Mortgage rate stabilization could bring some buyers back, but we just cannot really see it yet. Whether it's at a popular price points or people want to live near certain schools, they're willing to pay a little bit more. So mortgage rates are, we don't think just that the last few reductions are going to make a big difference. New residential constructions may expand housing options, but to where we see it, we don't see anything in the pipeline. So we don't see any big projects, especially for some of the big builders. And if there was, I don't know where they would build at because of the availability of buildable land. Growth in multifamily housing will help. We know the new ADU laws are going to be in effect, I guess, October 1st. So that will help with some of the smaller issues, but that's not going to give us a lot of supply. Home prices will rise a little bit more slowly than spiking. But then again, it's a big affordability issue. And that'll be the buzzword up in Annapolis this year. It'll be affordability and policy decisions, including the ADUs, target zonings, incentives, overlay tools. That's really what our associations are pushing right now. We just started our legislative sessions the first week of January. We went through almost like 60 House and Senate bills. Most of them had to do with zoning and energy things, items. But we will tell you that affordability is going to be the biggest lane that, at least our association, our state associations have been pushing for our state. But again, migration is real. The lack of supply over the last 5 to 6 years have just caught up with us. And we hope there's going to be an end to it, but in the next 2 to 3 years, we kind of see the same story. And I will do the same presentation next year, and I'm sure it's not going to change very much. It will be almost the same. So no big migration coming into our county that we see of. And so, and maybe that will help answer some of the school questions, but we've said it the last 3 or 4 years, and it kind of mirrors what our school systems are looking like too. So that should be about it. I think that's my last one. Yep, that's it.
Hey, Jimmy.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Jim? Hi, this is Barb Glenn. So this is a really challenging situation. So I'm compelled to look at your number 7, local policy decisions, to actually be the mechanism for the future. So first of all, I don't know what an ADU is, and then I want to ask you, what kind of actions are our local deciders taking right now on ADUs and targeted zoning incentives and overlays?
So ADUs are accessory dwelling units. Those are additional components in which you can add housing options as far as like use of your garages, basements, building smaller buildings. Like people have like the little cottages in the yard without changing zoning issues. So as the realtor body, I represent the Maryland realtors as far as the legislative part. We've actually had hearings. We spoke at many hearings. Now I want to say this goes back almost 3 years talking about this, including in Howard County at the county council, about loosening restrictions, especially for some of our aging populations in which, people want to age in place. And so we have additional spaces that we can use, some like above garages, or, you should be able to build certain things on your lot, on your, but then we ran into the NIMBY movement. And it felt that maybe it was, and I don't know how it got to the whole, I guess some of it had to do with schools. And I was like, well, wait a minute. Well, a lot of this has nothing to do with schools, because the space is going to be so small. It's going to be like for one person or one or two people. So that really, or no parking issues. It shouldn't be anything additional. But that was our biggest. And I'm gonna say, even in Howard County, because I think we spoke at least twice in the last couple of years about the ADU issue. Well, statewide, it did get passed that every county had to come up with a plan about that, because yes, that even though it does not help greatly, like it doesn't really move the needle as far as like housing availability or increases inventory, it does help some though.
Yeah.
And and by the way, other states actually have these, and it works very well. And I'm not sure why. Seem like we're the last one on board with this. But yeah, we've been talking about this. I want to say 2021. Yeah. 2021, 2022. Now we spoke at Howard County's council several times.
Excellent. I just was curious what the most active policy action was at the current time. And if we don't have any, it's the next question is, why don't we? Because your report indicates we should be thinking outside the box. So you've answered that, I think. Thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate
yeah. So, like I say, it's already there. So,
Yeah.
every county has to come up with their plan by October 1st of 2020. Yeah, 2026. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah, it's there. They had a study group last 2 years ago,
Okay.
and they came back, and that's what the recommendation was, and it's in plan now.
Well,
Yep.
thank you. I appreciate your answer. Thank you.
Yep.
I just want to jump in really quickly. Thank you for your presentation. This is Jackie McCoy. Um, you mentioned about the difficulty of selling condos, right? And the fees, the exorbitant fees that they charge. But we've got the Meriwether district that's full of condos, right? And so down the road a piece, we're going to have folks who want to move, and we're going to have housing that people don't want because they've learned that they don't want to live in these boxes and pay all those fees. And so, as the realtors are pushing for housing, the solution seems to be these boxes, right? That eventually nobody's going to want to be in. So outside of the ADUs, um, what other solutions are there? Because to me, everywhere you look, you see these boxes, and I see them turning into the larger cities have, over the years, they turn into tenements because people don't want to live there anymore.
So here's the interesting thing. So, we talk about the Meriwether district. There's two big apartment complexes down. One's called the Juniper, and one's called I can't remember the ones right behind it near the Busboy Poets. I can't remember, but that's the one that I was saying that the rents are as high as $3,900 a month for a 3-bedroom, which means these are qualifiable buyers who can buy into a home at, you figure, 450 to 500,000. So they can move, they can get there. They want to be here because that's why they're here and in the area. But they just need available homes. They did need available home purchase. Most of them want homes though. They want townhomes or they want single family homes. They don't want to go from an apartment back into a condo like situation. So, the thing is where's the buildable land? I know we talked about the gateway, but the gateway will not be an option forever. I mean, that I guess is planned out for the next 10 to 15 years. So that's not even an option. So what's left? Um, we've asked for as a realtor association, as a state realtor association, we've been lobbying about some of the restrictions of zoning and let some of the municipalities, some of the local municipalities, um, be part of the zoning, the rezoning uh, restrictions, and let them say, hey, this is okay and this is not okay, instead of going through layers through the state. And so, but I don't know if I just don't know. It just like what's left. But this county is it's very expensive to live. And so, especially for people like for support jobs, where do they live? And that's becomes expensive. And so, and that's kind of what we're hearing from the association, that the questions that are running up to us, hey, how does this work? Or how can you help us figure this portions of it out? And I know there's a lot of land in the land trust right now. There's a lot of talk about the restrictions of now the power companies and a lot of our energy companies using eminent domain and some of the easements, conservation easements of going through some of the farmlands and things, and so there's a lot of pushback there. So, it's a complex thing to try to work around, but as far as the realtor association, all we can do is try to advocate for some type of legislative action to ease up some of these restrictions of what's there. Like Route One corridor would be a great place to put some things, and repurpose some land. Um, but then you would need some infrastructure build outs of roads and things like that, and definitely some schools, I guess. But yeah, so I just don't know what to say. It's just like our population is definitely getting older in Howard County. We do know that, but they're not leaving because their houses are paid for and paid off, and they love being where they are. And so there's no incentive to leave.
So,
Yeah.
Jimmy, I think everybody knows I represent Farm Bureau, so obviously we're opposed to eminent domain and taking
Absolutely.
reserve
We
farmland.
agree with you. We agree with
So I
you.
just wanted to hit that head on. I'm going to hit that head on with you because you're the expert. So to what extent is anything around that land being debated or anteed up as a possible, hey, let's take that land by eminent domain? Are you hearing that? Is that happening?
No, it's good. A lot of has to do, I guess, the energy portions of it. I guess the power
Yes.
companies are looking for
Yeah.
waivers, but as far as us realtors, I mean, there should be safe spaces everywhere. I mean, we're property rights people, so.
Okay.
But I'm sure you're especially the Farm Bureau, you're probably getting a lot of pressure from the energy companies right now. And,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I just wanted to ask to be open and transparent here so that if there's a rise up of bringing this debate forward, we need to be prepared.
yeah. But always
you.
contact us, by the way. You can contact us because we're about
Yes.
it. But your land is there for a reason.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely. Okay. Perfect. Thank you, Jimmy. I appreciate it.
we can always weigh into. So anytime.
Can I just add something, Jimmy? You were talking about the Meriwether district, and the Marlowe is the other.
Marlowe, that's it.
Okay,
Marlowe.
that's operating more as a hotel. Okay, so when you talk about people even using that as rental or it's functioning differently because the market is what it is.
So here's an update. Here's an update. So the Marlowe, it used to. They had a couple of operating as a hotel. Used to.
Yeah.
This year it didn't. If you go to the Christmas season, because we tried to bring our some of our in-laws in, and they needed a place to stay near our home, and the Marlowe was no longer available.
Oh, because they were still negotiating. Anyway, that's fine. I mean, that's good to know if some of that has changed. But that was where we were, I'm going to say, in the fall.
Nope, no available.
Okay.
Yep.
Brian Hall has had his hand up for a while.
Yep, I didn't see. Okay, I don't see him.
Yep, no problem. Thank you for the presentation. I appreciate it. I just had, I guess, just one anecdote first. I went to graduate school and spent 10 years in Tennessee, and it seems like anyone down there with an orange vest and a shovel can start a construction project without any permits. And so kind of two opposite ends of the spectrum. But at any rate, I was just curious, as we talk about the affordability, obviously the housing stock in the county is aging. And, as that continues to happen, but yet presumably prices stay high because of the school system and the, location and the proximity to Baltimore and Washington. How do you see that playing out as these, aging homes, continue to just increase in price?
Well, I can tell you one thing: there's no shortage of home improvement companies here in our county. They're doing very well, but people are, they're staying put. They're not moving out. They're staying put. If anything, they're moving multiple families into their homes. So it's they're sharing homes, but it's yeah, like I said, it used to be uncommon to see 3 and 4 people on a mortgage application, but it's not uncommon now in Howard County. It's not uncommon. So, and that's some of the changes that we're seeing.
Thank you.
One quick point, because I think the distinction gets lost. There's a difference between housing affordability and affordable housing.
Yes, you're right.
Affordable housing is subsidized housing. Housing affordability is market rate housing. So when we talk about housing affordability, it goes specifically to the point of how can we make market rate housing less expensive as opposed to affordable housing, which is subsidized housing by the government in one way or another, which caters to specific income demographic groups that are below area median. So affordable housing is generally they're programs that residents that have incomes less than area median, in some cases considerably less than area median, apply for and get subsidized housing from the government, as opposed to housing affordability, which relates specifically to market rate housing being too expensive. So it seems to me that they're two very different things, but they're often conflated into one issue, and they need to be thought of separately, because now I think everything just gets lost in the wash.
Hey, so Todd, I also serve on the Howard County's DHCD board, and so even those projects that we've had this year, which I'm all about again, especially with MIHUs and LAHUs and things like that. Even those projects are, they're slowing down because of just land. And
Yeah.
so, and I think our biggest issue is really just land and zoning. That's what it comes down to, just zoning and land right now, and land use. So
Yeah, I mean, my company, not recently, but through the years, has done, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 affordable housing projects, whether they're moderate income or low income, multifamily buildings. Not in Howard, but in the state. And that's obviously a very different scenario than how do we get less expensive market rate housing available to families that could never qualify for the affordable housing programs. So I just want to draw that distinction so that we recognize that two very similar terms are applied to two very different situations.
no, I'm with you on that. I mean, yeah, I could have a whole talk about that and the tax in lieu and all that as far as like those type of projects. So yeah, I get that.
And the affordable housing option there is really the one to work on, because what the market will bear on the first one, housing affordability, we can't control that at all, right? Am I right or wrong?
Well, you can only kind of on the margins by making projects more achievable in a reasonable period of time, and you know
Okay.
we're debating housing affordability issues at the policy level, but that doesn't always translate to staff that's reviewing project applications.
Yeah. Good point.
And that's a challenge for developers, and they'll watch the policy debates going on with respect to, well, how can we deliver housing more effectively, more rapidly, and less expensively? This is market rate housing, and you don't always experience that when you're dealing with the review processes in the individual jurisdictions.
Okay. Thank you.
Because every time a reviewer looks at something and says, you really ought to increase the size of that pipe to 14 inches from 12, and you need to go backwards across the road, and you add $40,000 to a small project, it increases costs, and it delays projects, it slows things down, and so that's just a totally different challenge, but it does relate specifically to housing affordability as opposed to affordable housing.
So does Howard County have a proactive plan where they're scrubbing their application review processes and modernizing them and making them more efficient, as you've described?
You'll probably get policymakers to say that they are, and I know it's on their agenda.
Yeah.
Where the rubber meets the road in the review process, I'm not sure that that's always the case.
Okay.
Matter of fact, I'm sure it's not.
Yeah, actually, it's we see that all the time also. So it seems like, matter of fact, we we're just talking about this. There was a bill that came up about it. You could start a project within a certain amount of time, and then they can change a review process of how something is supposed to do as far as the way it's supposed to be built, like piping or whatever. And then you start the project, you come in there, the inspector says, nope, the code has changed to a 14 or 16-inch pipe. Now you have to tear it all down and start all over again. So that can be or a type of energy source cannot no longer use natural gas. We want electric. And you're in the middle of a project, and the project is, within 2 years in, and you got 2 more years to complete, and all of a sudden things change and the cost of it change. And then that means you got to redo things, and that cost of that per unit is now up. So yeah, we are very aware of that too. So that happens. And so yes, it's more on the state level than it is on the county level that actually the requirements are set.
Yeah. So in the circles I run in, everyone complains about this process and how slow it is and how many different hoops you have to jump through. And then at the same time, they talk about the politicization of the applications with respect to developers, et cetera. So, it's just complicated.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. The developing, well, so development is not easy.
No, it's not.
It's not easy. So it's it's a long process.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. And also, I remember last week, I think there was a presentation from the Econ Task Force, and among the many recommendations that include to simplify, streamline the review, the process, because that's one of the recommendations from that task force on that there. So I know the county are looking into that, among other things, try to promote economic base. A lot of discussion today are very relevant as everybody chimed in on that, but also in the next couple weeks there, please keep in mind because this committee can make certain recommendations. If you have certain takeaway or things that you want policymakers to keep in mind, that will be opportunity. So please keep this in mind in next 1 week or two, help pull certain information if you feel relevant for the committee to discuss and see whether anything folks want to include in the report. But thank you so much, Jimmy, and also thanks for a lot of great questions. Very, very dynamic, great conversation there. Any other questions? Okay. Thanks again, and thanks everybody for coming, and thanks to all our presenters there. As we just mentioned, that starting from next week, we'll dive even more towards more issues directly related to final recommendation, what people are thinking are critical and want to include in the report. So keep that in mind. Thanks everyone, and the meeting is adjourned, and we'll see you tomorrow, next week, same time for Tuesday, Tuesday virtual meeting again. Thank you.
Thank you.